The Story Droid presents Doll Island, a short story written by Andrew Dresner, all rights reserved. Narrated by using the voice Ayote in Google Gemini 2.5 Pro Preview, TTS. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, events, and incidents are the products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Please don't continue listening if you're triggered by situations centered around adult language, some violence, and alcohol use. A face among many. Blank expressions, all looking at nothing. Unknown author. The small town of Sao Shimilco came into view from the bus as it rounded a curve. Its proximity to a series of man-made canals made it popular. Many of the other passengers were friendly and from up north. A group from a college in California, a few couples, and some looked familiar from the hotel back in Mexico City. Lena Corbin thought while grabbing her pack from overhead. She could see an occasional view of the canal, but it was still mostly obscured by buildings as they passed them. They pulled into a parking lot, and the air hit them as they filed off the bus. It was hot and overwhelmingly humid. The 40-minute ride was a blur. Lena felt for a wad of pesos jammed into a front pocket as she stood facing the canal. "Hey, aren't you Lena? I'm Ray. Gonna do some sightseeing and hit the clubs tonight? You wanna come?" "Maybe," Lena said while staring at her phone. "Cool. Hope to see you later. We're staying at the San Marino," Ray said as he picked up his bag. He waved as he ran after his group. A row of brightly colored boats were lined up one after another. Countless numbers of them ran off into the distance. Lena saw that a few from the bus were speaking to some of the guides. "It'd be better for just the two of you to come with me. More, como se dice, muy romántico," one of the guides said while pulling a couple towards his boat. They shook their heads and climbed onto another with a group also from the bus. "Hey, why don't you come with us?" one of the ladies asked from the other boat. "I'm Beth, and this is my husband, Devin," she said as Lena climbed on. "Thanks. I'm an explorer and will be shooting video. Are you okay with being on camera?" Lena asked as everyone nodded. They pushed off, and they could see a few boats ahead of them. Music could be heard in the distance. Many were drinking from tall glasses, and others eating fruit from large plastic cups. Lena pulled out her camera and began an intro. Their guide moved them along, his muscular arms pushing and steering with a long wooden pole. The sun slowly shifted as they glided along the water. They passed more boats and hit into one. Steering seemed to be a challenge. A few were behind them. Laughter and music grew louder as they began to catch up. Everyone introduced themselves on camera, and some were even making their own live streams. They finally came upon a group of empty boats. A gate fashioned from tree branches all tied together was up ahead. It looked like an entrance to a hut Lena had seen during a visit to Africa. This one was wide enough for two people to walk through. She could see visitors milling about and signs leading to points of interest. It was more organized and formal than Lena imagined. Restrooms, a visitor center, and concession. It didn't match a video she'd seen about Doll Island. The outer fence was lined with a dense black mesh, and the dolls attached with zip ties. Lena went back through the front gate to find the boat gone. A grip came upon her shoulder as she turned. A tall, muscular man released her and pointed at a sign. It showed a price list. She was to pay for entry and an additional fee for permission to shoot video. "I wanted to go to the real Doll Island and was brought here," Lena said. The man shook his head and pointed at the sign. She reached into her pocket and gave him the money. He then handed Lena a ticket, which reminded her of something from her childhood. It looked like the same ones given out at carnivals, either for prize redemption or access to the rides. "You okay?" Beth asked. "This place is fake," Lena said. "Really?" Devin asked as he joined them. "Yeah, when's the boat coming back?" Lena asked. "Not until after dark. We told the driver we wanted to see the fireworks from town," Beth said. Most of the dolls looked as if they had just been pulled from their packaging, hanging from the trees and fence in neat rows. Lena began to shoot video and finished as the light began to fade. She figured it'd still make an interesting video and would upload it once back in town. She made her way to the latrine, which could easily be found by following its overwhelming stench, the stalls devoid of paper. Fortunately, she'd brought some with her. She continued to take some photos and shoot videos. After an hour, she found a bench next to a shop. Visitors were coming out with bottled water, snacks, and souvenirs. Lena pulled out her phone, sent some tweets, messaged to her friends, and checked email. A few hours later, the sky began to grow dark as the crowd thinned. A group had formed at the far end of an open area. They could hear a series of muted bangs, and the sky began to light up with multiple colors. Lena pulled out her camera and shot for a few minutes. She panned around to get some of the buildings in the distance. Lena pulled out her phone, sent some tweets, messaged her friends, and checked email. A few hours later, the sky began to grow dark as the crowd thinned. A group had formed at the far end of an open area. They could hear a series of muted bangs, and the sky began to light up with multiple colors. Lena pulled out her camera and shot for a few minutes. She panned around to get some of the buildings in the distance. Something caught her eye as the sky briefly lit up. An abnormally large doll seated along the side between the shop and latrine. As she approached, it looked more like a young girl than a doll. A film of dust covered its face and was wearing what looked like a hospital gown, pale blue with splashes of dried mud making an uneven pattern. Lena pulled out her camera and began shooting multiple angles at close range, her flash almost in time with the fireworks. In an instant, the doll opened its eyes, jumped up, and pushed past Lena, who fell backwards and onto the ground. Moments later, she sat up and craned her neck, but saw no sign of the girl doll. Once the fireworks show was over, in perfect choreography, the boats began to arrive. "Let me see that?" Devin asked, once back on the boat. Lena pulled out her camera and handed it to him. "You said it yourself, the place is a fake," Beth said, while looking at the camera's rear screen. They passed it around to the others who were almost too drunk to see it clearly. Once Lena got it back, she paired it to her phone. She then conducted an image search and handed the phone to Beth. "It's a trick they use for us. The stories vary," Beth said, handing the phone back. "Yeah, but that has to do with the real Doll Island," Lena said. "Real, fake, who cares? Still amazing," Devin said. "Look at this article. It says something about a missing girl who matches the one I saw, hospital gown and all," Lena said. "I'm telling you, it's just to get us to come to the island," Beth said. A few hours later, they were back in Xochimilco. The group waved as they took off towards town. A few cafes facing the water had most of their tables filled, voices loudening for attention as the waitstaff passed through. Lena would check into a motel called the Del Mar at the far edge of town, and then try to find something to eat. She came up to the two long buildings that contained the rooms and could see an office with a reception desk in the middle. The far end of the property had been cut into a hill, a retaining wall pushed up against it which sat below a slight outcrop. A few houses were perched above, overlooking the town. The woman from behind the desk took money and slid the key over, all in one fluid motion without looking away from her phone. Lena didn't see any place to get food, regretting that she hadn't gotten something before. Once in the room, she fired up the coffee pot, dumped in some bottled water, and waited for it to boil. A pack of ramen and a power bar would have to do. Once done, she washed up and changed into fresh clothes. The internet connection was spotty, and Lena was barely able to upload a series of stills. Almost instantly, comments flooded in, and some were asking questions, among them a dozen DM requests. One stood out as it was someone asking for a meetup. Sally 1 said she'd be in town the following morning. "Where are you now?" Lena asked in a private message. "I'm in Dallas. Can be to you in 4 hours," Sally 1 replied. "What's the rush? Can meet first thing in the morning." "Where are you staying?" Sally 1 asked. Lena almost dropped her phone as she closed the browser and tripped on the bed while backing away from the desk. She ran over to the door, latched the chain, and checked the lock. She stood with her back against it, staring ahead blankly. Sleep didn't come easy. Lena was up every hour and was checking the time. Dizziness set in as she got up to use the bathroom and almost tripped on the bed again. Who else knew where she was? Only her mother back in Tampa and her friends. They were stuck in Asia, where flights had been delayed due to poor weather. Then thought she should have postponed the trip until they all could have traveled together. Alcohol would have been a help, but no minibar. At first light, Lena packed up, dropped her key off at the front desk, and headed back into town. It was almost 6 a.m., and the sun just began to peek above a few buildings in the distance. She'd try to find more bottled water and something to eat. The shops wouldn't be open for several hours. That's when the tour buses were due to arrive. She took a seat across from the boats and pulled out her phone. No messages from Sally 1. Lena sent one to her friend, Jai Kabir. They met years ago during an excursion through Hong Kong and had been traveling together ever since. "Any luck with flights?" Lena asked in a text message to Jai. "Yeah, we'll be taking off in a few. I'm sending you something." Lena attached a photo of the doll and a link to an article. After a few minutes, she heard a chime. "Any word from Sally 1?" Jai wrote. "No, radio silence. Left the motel and is now in the open," Lena wrote. "Don't like it. Too creepy. Why didn't you wait for us to come back to the States?"
Didn't want to be home any longer. Got it. So your plan is to get the hell out of there, right? I want to check out a few things first. Not gonna let some scammers spook me. Looks like it already has. Promise you'll be careful, Jai wrote. She heard another tone, and this was a message with an attachment. It was of a girl who was a close match to the doll. It appeared in the comment section below the video from the previous day. Lena sent a screenshot to Jai and waited for him to respond. A fresh group streamed off a bus as the guides flocked to them. An hour later, the boats were loaded and about to push off. Lena found a shop on the main road and was able to buy some pre-packaged items that were safe to eat. A few overpriced bottles of water were added in. Once she packed up, then ran back to the line of boats and stood looking for one that seemed to have space. A few had already left as she turned her head. "Hey you back again?" a man said from one of the boats. Lena recognized him. "Yeah, need to go back. You take me?" "See, no problem," the man said while helping her onto the boat. "Why did you take me to the fake island?" Lena asked as the man pulled her away from the others. "Lo siento. Please keep your voice down. Didn't mean to cheat you. The real Isla de las Muñecas, Doll Island, is closed by the government. If we tell everyone, no money for us. If you want to come, you don't need to pay this time." Lena nodded and joined a group who were already sitting on the boat. The only difference from the previous day was the faces. Everyone was acting the same way, some drinking and others eating fruit. How boring it must be for the guides facing the same thing every day, Lena thought as they passed a tight patch of vegetation lining both sides of the canal. She pulled out her camera and began shooting some more B-roll. Would the thing she saw last night still be there? Lena asked herself as they moved past a boat with a band performing. It ran alongside them and they waited to receive tips before moving on to the next boat. They came upon the gate and one after another the groups entered. It was more crowded than the previous day and they didn't ask for the cost to shoot video this time. The line grew longer as the boats piled up in the canal. A woman who was wearing a suit was collecting money. The man from yesterday was standing in the middle of the clearing just in front of the concession. 20 minutes later, Lena was finding it difficult to stand still as the crowd pushed past her. She headed back to the space between the buildings. The doll was slightly smaller and very different, clearly unrealistic. Its blonde hair scattered around its head and clear glass eyes, pupils a bright brown. A pale blue dress, freshly soiled with mud, still wet. Lena pulled out her camera and began taking pictures of it, and suddenly felt a grip take hold of her right shoulder. "The one from yesterday that I told you about. She was taking pictures of it. I pulled her into the shed," the man said into his phone. Lena was sitting on the floor of what looked like a storage room. The man she remembered from yesterday who collected money and handed her the ticket. He stood with his arms crossed and was staring at her. Lena could hear voices outside and a passing plane overhead. The smell of gasoline and earth filled the air, and the door swung open. The woman from the front gate entered. "So you're the one posting about the Muñeca Muerta. A lot of activity online caused more people to show up," the woman said. "Where is it?" the man asked while grabbing at Lena as the woman pulled him away. "I'm Cleo, and this is my cousin Carlos. Just tell us where the doll is." "Don't know," Lena said, as Carlos grabbed her. "Get the hell off me," Lena said as she pulled away. "If I did anything with it, why would I come back?" The two backed away and began speaking so quickly Lena had trouble following, knowing very little Spanish. It seemed heated, and once done, Cleo shoved Carlos out the door. She began pacing as if searching for something. She then picked up a small, pointed shovel with a green handle. It was something Lena remembered, similar to what she'd seen while in a hardware store as a child. Cleo grabbed Lena by the shirt and brought the shovel to her throat. "Who sent you?" she asked.
"No one. I came here looking for the real Doll Island," Lena said as tears formed in her eyes. "Don't believe you. All alone and from up north," Cleo said, while digging the shovel deeper. Lena cried out as the shovel penetrated her neck. The pain was paralyzing while gripped in fear. The door opened a crack and Carlos peered in. "Keep it down. Can hear you out here." Cleo waved him off and pulled the shovel away. Lena put a hand to the wound on her neck and grabbed the handle of a nearby rake. Cleo had her head out the door and was still speaking with Carlos. Lena pulled herself up, swung the rake, it connected with the back of Cleo's legs, and she collapsed to the floor. Lena pushed past Carlos and took off towards the front gate. She turned and could see Carlos gaining as the water came into view. He was almost to her when she felt a tug on one of her arms. "Oh my God, Lena! Where the hell have you been?" a woman asked, still holding on to her. Carlos stopped and ran back to help Cleo. The woman was tall, thin, and wearing a suit, not something one would wear on a trip through the canals, Lena thought as they passed through the front gate. "Who are you?" Lena asked, as she was guided onto a waiting boat. The woman had a finger against her mouth and was shaking her head. The sun made its way across the sky as they headed back towards town. Lena still had her pack on. She pulled it off and took a seat at the bench across from the woman. "I've been trying to get a hold of you since last night," the woman said. "Sally?" Lena asked as the woman nodded. "We'll talk once back in town. Just sent you a message." A tone came from Lena's phone and she began to read. "How'd you do that?" Lena asked. "Just read." It was an article about a Melvin Del Mona who stole evidence and was shot by police in Texas. He escaped into Mexico but died shortly after. The evidence wasn't identified. Another message came in with a link to a YouTube video. Lena tapped on it and waited for it to load. It was of a young man who looked to be in his 20s. He wanted to unbox an old toy. He then tossed it away and pulled a black drape off what looked like a child. Lena almost fell off the bench as she grabbed the edge of the table. Sochi Malco was just up ahead as Sally One stood. She handed the driver money and climbed up onto the dock. Lena grabbed her things and ran after her. Sally One kept going as Lena struggled to keep up. They passed through the center of town and turned into a series of alleys. They came upon the end of a group of buildings and entered a thick group of trees. A couple of tents could be seen in the distance as they continued. They stopped at the furthest one and Sally pointed to two folding chairs. They both sat and the sound of birds chirping filled the air. Lena pulled out two power bars and offered one to Sally, who declined. "You're going to tell me what the hell is going on?" Lena asked while chewing. "They were going to kill you." "Who?" "The Del Monas." "Why?" Lena asked as she pulled out her camera and switched it on. "Best if you don't record this. Don't need any evidence that might prevent you from making it home," Sally One said while grabbing the lens and pushing it down. "Are you now going to tell me what the hell's going on?" Lena asked as a chunk of power bar flew out of her mouth. "The doll you found is actually a robot." "Bullshit! The same one that almost killed a 26-year-old in Texas." "How do you know that? The video looks fake," Lena asked as she heard a tone from her phone. It was a photo of the girl, and the second message was a video of the same girl who began to attack. The shots looked as if some kind of display was superimposed over it. Telemetry, a battery indicator, and storage status. Not typical of a camera. The video ended with the person shooting it picking up the girl. "The one I just sent was pulled from my memory," Sally One said. "Oh, I see. You're some kind of genetically modified soldier from the future to save me?" Lena asked as her expression softened. "You watch too many movies and don't read enough. I'm Sally One, made by a company called SynthLab in New York. A version 1 Sentinel put into service 1,845 days ago. been brought to Texas 2 months ago to mitigate a confrontation between the police and the robot. The what? The doll you found on the Delmona compound. Where did it come from and why was it there? That's a long story, and we haven't got time for that. I say we do, so start spilling it. The San Marino sat in the middle of town, with a wide view of the canals. Dozens of guests were making use of a large pool that was positioned within a continuous wall that surrounded it. It took on a beach-like feel, and one could order food or drink from within any part of the pool. Ray Waldron was laying on a lounge. A wave of nausea passed through him as he struggled to swallow. He sipped from a glass where the fumes from it were stinging his eyes. Attempting to stay drunk was proving a challenge. He'd already scouted out a location if he felt the need to vomit, to avoid being embarrassed by doing it out in the open. Sally One passed close to a worker and pulled off an ID badge, Lena trailing behind. They made their way through the lobby and into a lounge. Many of the guests were seated at tables. Most were drinking, and some eating. Sally One went over to a phone hanging on a nearby wall and picked it up. A few minutes later returned. They have 2 guests named Ray. One is currently with his wife, Sally One said. And the other? Lena asked.
Someone from his room said he's at the pool. They both turned and walked past a bar and out a series of automatic doors. The pool and outdoor lounge areas were in front of them. Lena recognized Ray, who appeared to be sleeping, and ran over to him as Sally One followed. "Hey, Ray, get up. Need your help," Lena said while shaking him. "What the hell?" Ray asked while pulling off his sunglasses. "We need your room," Sally One said. "Oh, and who are you?" Ray asked. Lena told him the story, and he sat up with his head in his hands. He was motionless for a long time. Someone dove into the pool as others passed by who'd just come out from the lobby. A couple had taken a table near the bar and began to order, their luggage with them, either just arriving or about to leave. Ray thought as he rubbed his eyes. "Come on, let's go," Sally One said as she grabbed one of Ray's arms. "I called this bullshit. Don't know what kind of scam you're pulling." Sally One jumped up, turned to face the doors to the lobby, and what sounded like a rifle blast echoed around them. Sally One flew backward and landed on the concrete with a large hole in her chest. Lena grabbed Ray and pulled him off the lounge chair as another shot was fired. One of the chairs exploded into pieces as she turned briefly. They ran towards the building, pulled on a service door, and were able to pass through it. Lena was still tugging at Ray, who stopped and began to retch. It turned into full-blown vomiting as he turned away, barely making it to a garbage can along one of the walls. They heard the door swing open and steps coming toward them. "What's the matter with you? We're gonna die," Lena asked as Ray put his hands up and took a deep breath. She then pulled him down the hall. "Where are you going?" Ray asked as he stopped at the elevators. "Come on," she said, continuing to drag him down the hallway. "Need to go to my room," Ray said as a chime came from Lena's phone. Sally One said, "We need to get out of here, now." "The one who's dead? Tell me what the hell's going on," Ray said as he stopped short in the middle of the lobby and refused to move. They could see police cars out front and a half a dozen officers entering. Some of the guests were heading out the main entrance, and others were speaking with the staff. Lena turned and began to look at everyone around them. The gunmen nowhere to be seen. The police began escorting everyone out of the lobby while another group was out by the pool standing around Sally's body. Lena and Ray were let out and directed to stand behind a barricade among the other guests. In almost a whisper, Lena told Ray what happened since she arrived, and he just stood with his mouth open. "You got any toothpaste inside that bag of yours?" he asked. Lena reached in and squirted some onto one of Ray's fingers. He smoothed it around the inside of his mouth and went to spit away from the crowd. "Better?" Lena asked. "A little, thanks." "Do you have to drink until you're sick?" "Didn't think anyone was going to drag me into some kind of nightmare." "Now what?" Lena asked. "You're asking me?" They continued to watch as security milled about while the sun began to dip behind the trees. An ambulance pulled up, and a few minutes later, a gurney was wheeled out with the outline of a body beneath a white sheet. Lena edged closer to a barricade, bumped into it, and almost caused it to topple over. This grabbed the attention of an officer who waved them back. "She's really dead, isn't she?" Ray asked as Lena nodded. "No, she's not," a voice called from behind them. They both turned to face a girl who looked to be about 12 or 13. Straight blonde hair wrapped around her head with piercing blue eyes that almost seemed to glow. "That's her," Lena said, aiming her phone at Ray. On its screen was a photo taken while on the fake doll island. Her clothes were different, but the face, unmistakable. "What do we do now?" Lena asked. "Once things calm down, I'm going back to my room. And no, you can't come with me," Ray said. "He'll come looking for you," the girl said. "Who?" Lena asked. "Ponch," the girl said. "Who?" Ray asked. "Ponch Del Mona, the one who blasted a hole in Sally 1, the girl said. "And who are you?" Ray asked, rubbing at his eyes. "I'm DSU-003, also known as June. I can provide more information, but can't do it here out in the open. They want me back." "Who?" Ray asked. "The Del Monas," June said. She grabbed Lena and Ray by their hands and pulled them away from the crowd. They walked along a narrow road which turned to dirt. Ray was having trouble keeping up since he was barefoot. They made quick turns in and out of groups of buildings. Once back in the center of town, June pulled them to a small cafe. It was on the edge of the water facing the canal. A few of the boats were returning as others left. The three sat at a small round table and pulled over a menu. "How can you be thinking about eating right now?" Lena asked. "I need something to calm my stomach and don't want to attract attention," Ray said, as June nodded. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" Lena asked. "I was bought by a cartel to push drugs, was made by people who stole my design from a robotics company from the US and ended up on Doll Island," June trailed off. A man emerged from the crowd, ran up to Ray and grabbed him by the throat as Lena saw Cleo walking towards them. "Get rid of him," she said, and sat down. The man dragged Ray off towards a waiting van, while others around them watched with mouths agape. Almost instantly, they all automatically returned to what they were doing. "He knows nothing. Don't you hurt him," Lena said in a hiss. "I know. We don't want to have anything to do with him. His family has no money, and I really haven't got time for that," Cleo said as she crossed her legs. "What now?" Lena asked. "You tell me everything. How you got the robot to work and control it," Cleo said. What sounded like a gunshot rang out, which caused Cleo to turn away. Ray rushed back, his shirt soaked with blood from a wound near his left shoulder. He plowed into Cleo, who fell over while still in the chair as two men came up to them. "Run! Get the hell out of here!" Ray said as he held Cleo down. June jumped up, grabbed Lena's hand, and pulled her away. Moments later, they were running through a series of narrow alleys and didn't stop until they came to a parking lot. A group of tour buses were parked in the center. A message came in from Jai asking if she was okay. After a quick talk with the driver, Lena was allowed onto the bus. She turned and couldn't find June as the door closed and they began the trip back to Mexico City. Lena found a seat at the back and fell into it. She closed her eyes and fell asleep. She felt someone's hands on her once she opened her eyes and found an old lady staring at her. "Sorry, dear. Just wanted to let you know we're here," the lady said, patting him gently. Lena grabbed her bag and filed off the bus along with the last of the others. She found it hard to find her footing, legs tingling and felt a bit rubbery. It was already dark and found a bench and almost tripped getting to it. She shook her head and rubbed both eyes, vision now blurred. What the hell had just happened? Is Ray okay? Where's June? Lena asked herself as things came back into focus. She looked around as a small group passed by. Some seemed to look familiar, which began to be an ongoing occurrence, tourists dressing the same. Quite a few of them were drunk, and others carrying souvenirs. She saw June coming from the cargo hold underneath the bus and exhaled. June waited for the driver to turn away and approached while carrying a red duffel bag. She then took a seat next to Lena. "I was worried about you," Lena said as she hugged June. "Why'd you do that?" June asked. "Dunno, just glad to see you," Lena said. "What now?" "We go home." "We?" "It's not safe here. Have to figure out a way to get you into the States." "You're taking me with you?" "Yeah, I can't leave you." Lena said as June faltered. She almost fell before Lena grabbed her. You okay? Need to recharge. In the red bag, there's an induction pad. Lena guided her into the waiting area, pulled out the charger, and plugged it into a nearby outlet. June sat down onto it and became motionless. Lena pulled out a power bar and began gnawing on it. Is it working? Yes, but it'll take longer than if I had a real charger, like the one Sally 1 had. What happened to her? You said she's not dead. Yes and no. The factory makes new versions of them, like clones but improved after each generation. Sick, demented creeps who make robots that look like children. No, my design was made by someone else, the technology and programming stolen from them.
We've got to get out of Mexico. Not sure how this is going to work. Pack me up and ship me out. Where? Anywhere. Where are you going? Back to Tampa. That sounds like a good place to be right now, June said. Before any of this happened, I would have disagreed, Lena said. A few hours later, June had gained enough of a charge. They dropped the red bag off at the ticket booth. In Spanish, June was able to tell the clerk they found it while getting their own bags. Lena explained that it was better to turn the bag in rather than be found with it. After making a quick search, they found a UPS store. June filled out a form and pulled Lena around the corner. In the alley behind a series of buildings, they found a pile of cardboard boxes next to a dumpster. You sure you'll be okay? Lena asked. Yeah, the factory does this all the time. June climbed into the box, pulling her knees to her chest. Lena grabbed a wad of bubble wrap from the dumpster and began packing it around. June closed her eyes and became still. Once she was completely covered, Lena carried the box back into the store. The worker taped the box closed and affixed an address label to it. He then began placing red labels on each side, which must have indicated it was fragile. She thanked him and walked out. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If you or anyone you know is having substance abuse issues, call 1-800-662-4357 or text your zip code to HELP4U 435748. Domestic and gender-based violence support, call 1-800-621-HOPE. You are not alone. Please comment below. We look forward to hearing from you. If you enjoyed this program, hit the like button and subscribe so you're informed as to when new stories are available.